Hello, and welcome to the Imperishable Consciousness Platform, where I'm your host, Adrian Camacho. We look to record and preserve modern history in an attempt to inspire and inspire the next generation of leaders and change makers. Today is episode 4, and we are joined by a very special guest, who is a teacher, instructor, community leader, and role model, along with being extremely knowledgeable regarding the human body and anatomy. Taylor Manney, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is a really great, venue for you to do this.
Yep, thank you. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate your time, more than you know.
Yeah.
Just to start us off, tell us a little bit about yourself, like where are you from, and kind of like, what are some of your interests?
Okay, let's see where I'm from. I'm from Las Vegas originally, born and raised, pretty much. I grew up dancing and performing, and theater was my passion. But I always, I think why I loved dance so much was because of how much I could connect with my body. I loved the kinesthetic awareness. I loved being able to build strength and see like myself setting goals and getting to those goals. And so, yeah, I was always very interested in the body aspect since I was a kid. And then I went to Performing Arts High School. I was a dance and theater major there. I eventually went to Point Park University in Pittsburgh, where I was a dance major as well. I took a lot of Pilates and kinesiology classes through my degree and became really interested in the body more. So, and then after I graduated, I ended up performing. I performed on cruise ships for a long time and did other dance contracts, and then just got to the point where I wanted a normal life instead of like constantly going paycheck to paycheck and audition to audition. So I ended up getting my Pilates certification as a way to, which is a very common thing for dancers to transition into that world. And I got my Pilates certification. I ended up getting other certifications through people that I connected with. They said, oh, you should try this, fascial stretch therapy, you should try this, neurokinetic therapy. And I just kept wanting to get more information. And eventually now I teach at a dance studio and I run the studio without running the studio. And I'm in charge of all the technical classes and teaching the kids about their bodies.
Yeah.
And then now I work at Beloit as well for this semester to help teach an older generation.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I really appreciate like how you said like that you were constantly kind of like searching for that like everlasting, like not like everlasting knowledge, but like constantly searching for like new knowledge and like stuff like that. And I feel like that's what this podcast and platform is all about, is kind of just trying to learn new information and give that to the viewers in many different avenues as possible. But you mentioned that you kind of had like a passion for dance and theater. Where would you say, like at what age maybe did that start, and like where did that even start? Like did you take like a dance class or maybe like a friend, or how would you say that you kind of got started in that area?
Let's see. I think from the time I came out of the womb, I was like putting on shows. When I was like 2 or 3 years old, I'd dress up and sing something, and I just was always moving around or, just making up plays and things like that. And I know when I was quite young, like, 4 or 5, my mom said, oh, let's put you in soccer. Let's try this. Let's try that. And I didn't want to do any of it. I just said, I want to go to dance class. I want to go to dance class. And so I think I started dance when I was 3, and I didn't stop. I haven't stopped. I still take dance class now, 28 years later. So my mom did some performing. She was never a dancer, but I did have a little bit, I think, in my blood from her.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it was never, and for me, dance wasn't even like a social aspect. For a lot of kids, they get into it because a friend did it, or, they want to hang out with their friends. And I guess I was like selfish in class. Like class was always for me. I'd like my friends, and I'll talk to you after class, but I didn't want to ever like socialize during class because that was my special time.
Yeah, so class was kind of like your time to kind of like develop your own skills and work on your craft in a sense. You kind of wanted to be focused on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can kind of relate to that, like with being a lacrosse player and stuff like that. When you kind of get in practice, you kind of want to focus on your craft. You really want to talk about like how's class, or
this thing happened. Did you hear this thing happen the other day? I'm like, I hear my students sometimes in class, they start, going off and socializing, and I always have a hard time understanding that. I'm like, that's not what this time is for.
Yeah.
But, everyone does do their hobby for different reasons, and mine was purely for me.
Yeah, exactly. That's awesome. And so you mentioned, I know you mentioned talking about like soccer. Did you play any sports in the past, or not really?
I did volleyball when I was in middle school. My dad said you have to do a team sport at some point in your life. So, which I don't think he understood that dance is a team sport in the fact that if you put on a show or whatever, you are working with many people and it is a team aspect. But it's not for like points and trophies.
Yeah.
So I did do volleyball. I actually really liked it, and I did golf as a kid as well because my parents were golfers. But that's really the only thing. Now I'm an old person at heart and I play pickleball.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just got a pickleball team at Beloit, I think, that they just started, or
Oh,
pickleball
really?
club. Yeah, so that's awesome.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Yeah. Have you ever had like any injuries or like any challenges that you've had to like overcome as like a dancer or like a performer?
Yes. Luckily, when I was younger, like in high school, I didn't have anything that I had to really deal with.
Yeah.
When I was in college, I ended up, my second year, I broke my tailbone. And that was pretty, I was out for like at least 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be out any longer, so I just pushed it and got right back into it.
Yeah.
I ended up having some really long-term effects from that. And then there was when I was dancing on cruise ships, I had a knee injury, which took me out for a couple weeks. And nothing has ever been, career shattering. But there's definitely been a lot of things that when I was younger, I pushed through. And then it took me until like my late 20s, and I had a lot of body work done by a good friend of mine who helped me get through that.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. And would you say that like what kind of lessons has dance taught you, or theater and sports even?
Oh gosh, life lessons, a lot of them. I mean, I had a professor in college, a dance professor, say to us that we all have a vehicle to learn life. For us as dance majors at Point Park, dance was our vehicle. For someone else, it could be lacrosse.
Yeah.
For someone else, it could be pickleball or basket weaving. I mean, it could be anything. And I do think that every hobby or sport that you're involved in is going to teach you life lessons. And I mean, for me, it's taught me perseverance. It's taught me grit. It's taught me how to work with others. It's taught me confidence. It's taught me how to think on my feet. And if something goes wrong on stage, you can't show it. The show must go on type thing. So that I think a lot of those things have helped me now in life, because so many things we get involved with, we don't know what they're like. It's all the unknown. And for a lot of things with theater and dance, a lot of things are unknown. When you're on stage, something can happen and you have to figure it out in the moment. And there's been many moments in my life where I didn't know if I was going to get through something, but because I've gotten through dance and through some things, I'm like, oh, well, if I did that, I can do this.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense, and that's definitely a very unique perspective to hear from you, especially since like I'm like an athlete. It's good to hear like a dancer and like a performer's perspective. Like we kind of go through the same things, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But going off of that, like how long have you been like an instructor for, whether it be for like Pilates or for dance?
Well, let's see. Pilates I've actually kind of taught longer. So I started teaching Pilates when I was 22, 22. So that's been about 9 years. Dance, I always, it's funny, I didn't want to ever be a dance teacher. I didn't want to be a teacher of any sort, because I just felt like why would anyone want to listen to me? I don't know anything, or someone probably knows more than I do, like imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I didn't start teaching dance till I was probably 24, 25, and now I can't imagine doing anything else but teaching. So it's really interesting how that worked.
That's awesome for sure. And how long would you say it would take to like build up your confidence to kind of like get in front of the classroom and kind of like put yourself out there in front of people? And like you said, you were like kind of that imposter syndrome. How long would you say it would take to kind of build that up?
Interesting. I would say with everything, honestly, probably in the last 2 years, I've actually settled in. When I was younger, when I was 22 and I was a fresh Pilates teacher, I was teaching people in their 60s and 70s, or 40s, or I wasn't teaching anybody younger than me, and so I I thought, like, why would these older people want to listen to me? Why am I the authority figure? So I did struggle with that for a long time. I would say it helped me when I started teaching children in dance because I'm obviously older.
Yeah.
So, I could tell them, like, actually, I do know more than you.
Yeah.
And so I think that helped me build confidence. And then in my Pilates practice, when I am with adults now, I do have the confidence to say, I know you know things, but I also know things, and I trust what I know.
And you also have years under your belt in a sense.
Yes, and like at that point, it's been like 8 or 9 years.
Yeah.
And I think something does happen. People say you change when you turn 30, and it is very true. It is very true. There's a whole new set of confidence that comes when you're 30. It's like, I got through my 20s just fine. I think I know how to do this thing of life.
Yeah.
So I think turning 30 helps me too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And going back to Pilates, what would you say, for the viewers that maybe haven't tried Pilates or don't really know what Pilates is? What would you say some of the health benefits are for anybody, even athletes or even the regular everyday person?
Yeah. Okay. So Pilates benefits for me is body awareness, which is huge.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people aren't aware of their bodies. They aren't aware when something hurts or where they're feeling it. Posture is a huge thing. I know we've talked about in class a lot. And I think posture is the basis for everything. If you don't have good posture, it's like the foundation of your house.
Yeah.
You would never build your house on sticks. You would have a solid foundation. So I do think Pilates sets you up with a solid foundation to be able to do anything else that you want to do.
Yeah.
Whether it is CrossFit or bodybuilding or just getting on the floor to hang out with your grandchildren when you're 70 years old.
Yeah.
So those are the big things for me. I know, there's some teachers out there who teach very classical Pilates, they call it, and it's kind of like the original exercises that were made up by Joseph Pilates 100 years ago. I've found that I'm just a little bit more, I like to be more of a functional teacher. I'm like, these exercises are really great, but what do we do functionally now is probably different than we did back then.
Yeah.
And so I do like to use it as a functional thing for people.
Yeah, I feel like that's very important, kind of changing with the modern times. And would you say with our modern times, kind of we adapted to social media and being on our phones, would you say our posture is kind of decreased as a society as a whole?
1,000%, yes. Phones, we just naturally pull our heads forward, and computers.
Yep.
We sit a lot, whether it's remote jobs, whether they're at home or in an office. Luckily we have things now like standing desks, and I think that has helped people a lot. But yeah, our way of life is different. 100 years ago they were standing all the time because they were working on farms or they were working in a factory, and I think back then they didn't have to maybe worry about posture as much because they didn't have modern technology to have to work against.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And kind of going back to one of the points that you made originally about when you first started out as a Pilates instructor, you were kind of teaching people that were 60, 70 years old. Would you say nowadays maybe I understand you're kind of a college instructor, but maybe even in those other classes that you teach outside of college, has the demographic maybe changed a little bit? Because I noticed maybe NFL players that even do Pilates now, and it's kind of, I feel it's pretty awesome to see that people are kind of respecting it more. And what would you say regarding that?
Yes, I agree with that. I would say, back when Pilates really came on the scene, it was it's the 70s, 80s, 90s, where it got into the mainstream event. Definitely an older population, and it also at the time too, it was a lot more expensive. It was a very kind of the elitist thing to do. So generally people older who have money, could afford that. I think though, because of social media and having it just being able to be more widespread, and Pilates is definitely, like I said, they used to teach it very classically, and now it's kind of morphed and it's a little bit more contemporary. You see it a lot in PT. A lot of really great physical therapy centers have Pilates, which is actually kind of where I was first introduced. I forgot one injury I had. I did break my ankle when I was 13 years old, and I went to a physical therapist's office, and they had Pilates there. And my doctor at the time when I broke my ankle said, "Oh, you're fine. You're an athlete. You don't need physical therapy." And in my head, I'm like, that means I need physical therapy more because I don't do what normal people do.
Exactly.
So I ended up going to this PT. They had Pilates, and that's where I actually really got introduced to it. And so I could see the benefits of that way. But yeah, it's now since then, there's very few athletes who don't do some sort of modality like that. And dance too. There's lots of football players that their coaches make them do dance class. And I think cross training is fantastic for that.
Yeah, for sure. Dance definitely helps with like footwork and stuff like that.
And balance, posture, very, very similar to Pilates.
Yeah. And kind of going back to, like you said, how Pilates kind of even helped you with injuries. How is like being an instructor or being a teacher have been able to, like, how have you been able to impact people? Because I know you've mentioned like in your classes, like helping people with injuries and stuff like that. So how would you say?
Yeah, I do have a lot of students who will come to me, whether it's through the college or my students, my young ones, like my 12-year-olds at my studio, and you know, they ask like, oh, my ankle's this, or I feel my hip pop when I lift my leg, and it's really, a lot of it has just been based off of things I've experimented with my body, and over time I'm like, oh, I had this similar thing and I tried this and it worked for me, or I tried these exercises. So I think a lot of that has been my own experience that I can pass on. But yeah, it is very cool to be able to teach somebody at a younger age things that, you know, they can help their body long term. Because injuries and just overall body wellness, I mean, if you don't have quality of life within your body, it can be, you know, detrimental to your mind and your, I mean, all aspects of your life. So I do think that physical health is really important that way.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And have you had like any mentors or like people like you look up to, like whether it be like within Pilates or dance?
Yeah. Well, the very first lady who showed me Pilates with my PT, her name is Tara Foy. And she is a ballet instructor and a Pilates instructor. She's been doing it for years and years. She's just really, I always respected her because she knew how to push you without breaking you. You know, it's like that healthy, like, I know you can do it. And she was very eloquent and very confident, and I definitely looked up to that. My dance teacher growing up was very similar, just like these very strong, powerful women. And especially with dance, I had mostly women teachers. It's more of a common female thing. I did have some great male teachers. There was one in college, Professor Doug Bentz. He also had a very large Pilates background and dance background, and he was another one who, you know, pushed me without breaking me, and I feel like I've had a lot more knowledge and confidence in myself because of him. Yeah, I would say those are probably some of the biggest educators in my life that have helped me.
And like you said, most of them kind of pushed you without breaking you. I feel like that's very important within like athletics and within different sports or dance and different, you're saying different modes of like build like in a team in a sense, you know, where they're kind of leading the team. I feel like that's very important because you need to build that relationship with your student or with your athlete. And going off that, I feel like it's also like I want to be a teacher, so it's like you kind of have to show you believe in them, like because there's often times where it's like some teachers or some coaches don't show that they believe in their students, and it kind of that shows that like, or they might not push them, so it shows that they don't believe in them in a sense. So that can kind of be detrimental to their confidence and their everything else, whether it be in the classroom, like if you're like a math student, and you're like, oh, well, you got a 60, well, it's fine. You should be like, oh, well, you can do better next time. You should be like building them up and saying that you expect more from them because you know that they can do more from them. You can get more from them. So I feel like that's very important. I'm happy that you mentioned that for our viewers. And kind of another thing that I wanted to ask, what type of injuries do you see within athletes that are like pretty common and maybe like for our viewers, and what kind of like maybe exercises could you maybe do to prevent them?
Yeah, let's see. I would say some of the biggest things that I've seen personally with like clients that I've worked with, athletes especially, is it's usually from the back. It's usually like low back stuff, low back pains. And for me, our spine is our foundation for our body. It's where everything attaches to. And the biggest muscle that attaches to your spine is your core. And your iliopsoas and different transverse abdominal muscles. You're like hearing all these words that you hear in class. So I would say, first off, I would start everyone with breathing. I think that's a thing that is very lost in our society. And I would say breathing exercises are huge to engage the core. Whether you're an elderly person or a young person, especially people who are pregnant, breath work is huge to help redevelop their core. So I would always say to start with core work or breathing work for core. You know, I would, with injuries, I would say to anybody, learn how to isolate muscles. Oftentimes we try to compensate one muscle by using another, and I think a lot of injury prevention can be done by, can I just lift my arm without moving the rest of my body? And can I lift it with 5 pounds? Then can I lift it with 10 pounds? Can I lift my leg off the ground without my body doing something out of the ordinary? And that's core control for me, is isolating the body in different ways. And I think that's where you can train individual parts of you, and then they eventually can work better cohesively.
Yeah, and I think that you mentioned that during one of our classes, that Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think.
Yes.
That you kind of, so that he was one of the pioneers for that in a sense.
Yes,
so.
he was with his bodybuilding methodology, he was like, if I want to build up my bicep, I'm going to stand here and I'm going to think about contracting my bicep and then slowly releasing it. And he was really good about, that isolation work.
Yeah. So this kind of leads us into like the next section. It's like a little prayer reflection section. So I'm just gonna give like a little a little message of hope to the people out there, I guess.
I love that.
So a little prayer. Father God, I pray that you protect and guide everyone during the spring break, especially those who feel vulnerable, hurt, unwelcome, or unwanted. In Jesus' name, amen. So now we'll kind of continue to the next segment. What advice do you maybe have for the next generation of leaders, change makers, and dream chasers in general?
Ooh, the next set. Okay. I'm seeing this a lot with, just because I teach the next generation with my younger ones. To not compare yourself.
Definitely, it's very important.
I think that is huge. I think with social media, I think this generation has probably one of the hardest obstacles to overcome when it comes to that. And I see a lot of students constantly thinking of like what's someone else doing, what they're doing, and there's just not this internal focus. It's very external focused. And I think comparison is external, and I fully believe that if every person in this world just looked inside and stopped, not like we shouldn't care about other people, but focus on ourselves first, and if every single person did that, like the whole world would be just, I think that's where we get world peace. It's just we all are at peace with ourselves. So I would say for the next generation, look more internal, less external. And then also that that you are more capable than you realize. I think every person in this world is more capable than they realize, and to maybe look at yourself like the older version of you is looking at you. It's like more developed you, like if you are this small tree now, imagine you as a big tree later, and the big tree's looking back on the small tree and saying, look at what you could grow into. And I think that will also help with comparison and living in this world of our whole lives are, in view of everybody, or the parts that we want them to be in view, right? The good parts. I would say just know that you are more capable than you realize. I have a lot of students who get caught up in the small details, and I actually have this little saying for my students this year. I'm like, this is small potatoes. This thing you're dealing with is probably not going to matter in a day or two or in a couple weeks. Like, let's look at let's be upset about the big potato things. And I think a lot of things are small potato. I think dance, it's like, to tie it back to when I was younger, my teachers, my mentors believed in me and realized that I was capable more than I thought I was. And I've been able to get through many hard parts of life, or easy parts, or fun parts of life, because I just knew that there was, I knew I could handle it. And so I'd say you're capable, so capable.
Yeah, I really like that for sure. Thank you for sharing that. And sorry. That kind of leads me to like two sayings that I kind of hold within me, or that I see. One of them is that I see common nowadays, like, comparison is a thief of all joy.
Oh yes, and, I love that saying.
Yeah, and then another one that I say that like I kind of held with myself, like in one of my speech classes, my college speech class, my senior year, was that self-love is the best love. Like I feel like in order to, but it sounds selfish, but like no, it sounds selfish, but like the theme of the the speech was that like in order to love other people, you need to love yourself so you can give them the best version of yourself. Like
Absolutely.
in order, like for example, like if you're like me, I'm a coach. I coach lacrosse sometimes too. You know, I'll run like camps. Like for example, you like you're a dancer, or both of us.
Yeah.
If you kind of stay up later, you don't sleep well, you can kind of show up grumpy. That might affect your students.
1000%.
And then that can even affect your relationship. You can have like rocky roads from there on. So it could be
Absolutely.
stuff like that. It's just important to be like the best version of yourself in order that people can kind of be reciprocal to that, and that they can kind of see the best version of yourself.
Yes,
So, yeah.
absolutely. If we all just presented our best version, most of the time, obviously, we're going to have bad days, but I think there would be a lot less just negativity in the world, whether it's really intense, like, you know, or if it's really small. But I do believe that. Definitely agree with you.
Yeah. And so my next question would be kind of like, what changes would you like to see within your own community?
What changes? You know, I would love to see, I at least in Janesville, and I don't know so much about Beloit exactly, but in Pilates has tried to be brought to Janesville multiple times, and people haven't caught on to it yet. I would love to see that become more of a thing where people become a little bit more aware of their bodies and how and of themselves that way. I think there's definitely a want for it, but there's not enough want for it to grow yet. I think we're getting there. I think that this part of our community is really flourishing and is opening up to new mindsets and new ways of thinking. So I would love to see that. But yeah, that would probably be my biggest thing.
For sure.
Yeah.
Going off that, like, have you ever like thought about opening your own like Pilates business or anything like that, or have you ever done that maybe? Experienced doing that?
I have not tried to open a business. I have tried to run some Pilates classes at our studio, especially for adults. I do think that I think there's a lot of things in some ways for kids to do around this area, but there isn't sometimes as much for adults to do. Whether it's even just for fun. I mean, really, the only thing to do around here is go to a bar. It's very, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they're like, you remember the roller rink that used to be in Janesville, and like adults and kids used to go, and they used to be active together. And I feel like there's not as many of those places anymore. And so I'd love for somebody to open up like a roller rink and arcade for adults, or, to keep people active. I think we all tend to get sucked into our homes. We get sucked into our phones because there aren't those opportunities to be active. So I would love to see that. But I did try with a Pilates class. I couldn't get enough people to come. I know actually a woman I used to work for in Madison. She's tried to set up Pilates stuff in this area. It's also just been hard to set it out. So I think maybe over time it'll happen. I think just getting the word out. But I think even before that, it starts with like just having more options for people to even want to be active.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you in this area. There's not many options for adults to get out and like even go with their kids. Maybe like there's only like the movie theater and like maybe things like that, but it's not very active,
Exactly. It's a lot of like sedentary things. There is a place in Janesville I love that has axe throwing, and I'm like, okay, that's fun. Like we can be active, we can do things together, and unfortunately with our weather, golfing or whatever or doing outside things is short-lived. So I think if there was more indoor activities for people.
Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of ironic because I know that like the lacrosse team just went to like Ironworks. Basically, they have like a lot of simulators there.
Yeah.
But it's like indoor. It's indoors. It's kind of like a Top Golf indoors in a sense with like simulators
Oh,
like that.
cool.
But I feel like yet again it's like not very well advertised.
Yes, or there are things, and then I'm like, this has been here for how long? I've never even heard about this. And so I think it's like we need more. That's what we should see on social media. Is all of that.
But like an idea that just came to me, I guess, would be like for me, I feel like an awesome thing would be like maybe like organize like a community like yoga or Pilates like outdoor outside like near like the river.
Yes.
I feel like that would be really awesome. Like to kind of get like maybe like the elderly or like anybody that wants to come out and experience like I don't know more with their bodies, And I've even I don't know. So
I love that. Yeah. I love that. There's a farmers market in Janesville, and I know they've done like Zumba classes and stuff outside, but I might have to check in and see if anyone's ever done Pilates.
Yeah, exactly. Because I feel like I know you mentioned going outside for one of our classes. I feel like that is very peaceful and like even going because it's with mad and everything,
Yes.
You don't have to worry about the grass being on you and all that stuff. So
Right.
Not that it's a big deal, but you know what I'm saying? Like it's less itchy or whatever,
Yeah.
So I feel like it's very awesome to be out there in the sun and be able to experience with your body. You know, it's less cramped up than in the studio.
Yes.
But aside from that, the next question would be, what traits do you feel like a great leader must have in order to be successful?
My thing with a leader is I don't think a leader needs to say they're a leader. I think that's a big thing, is just to show by example.
Yeah.
Also, I think a leader is not necessarily about controlling others
For sure.
or telling people what to do. It's about inspiring them to want to do better.
Yep.
That is my big thing that I have realized. Just, I think a teacher has to be a leader because they have to, you know, guide multiple souls in this lifetime. And I have found that, and I think there are some leaders in this world that just lead by telling people what to do. And
unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I think some of our big leaders, like the people that we should really look up to, and I think it's really in our, like you said, in our community, in our small town environments that we see true leadership.
Yeah.
And yeah, that would be for me is inspiring.
Yeah. I feel like 2 points going off of that. Thank you for that. I would say, like you said, the small town leadership. I feel like those are the people that are really passionate about their community. They really want to see change. They've maybe even been affected by it, and they want to make sure that people are affected by it. Like, I see a lot of people that come back to Beloit, like Matt Laszlo, Tim Leslie, Brian Morello even. Like, these people were students who were at the school and they kind of left, were very successful in their own pathways, and they kind of felt the need to come back and give back because they know that Beloit kind of has given to them. And yeah. And going back to like your leadership point, I'm in a fraternity. I'm in Sigma Chi, and we have like I'm a junior now. I'm like an exec. I've been an exec member for 2 years, but like we kind of struggle with like I always like say that we need to change the culture. Like you shouldn't need to like force people to do things. People should understand and buy into what you're doing, and they should be passionate about it. They should see like if you push in, something will come out the other end, basically. You know.
Yes.
And I feel like that's what it's all about, is getting people to understand that it's more than just being told what to do. It's like you should take in your own initiative, and you should see like for example, like we have like a lot of members that are on top of the exec board, and they kind of carry the weight of the house. And like, you see this guy's stressed out, and he's an athlete, he does this, he does that, you should want to help him out, you know. And it's like a lot of people should really take that within themselves, like, because I know me as a freshman, I saw like the consul, for example, the president, you know. He was going through a lot, and he was one of my role models, Keeler Tardif, and I know that I kind of wanted to help him out in any ways possible, whether it be like putting up flyers for like a party or an event, or even checking in on him, and just being a listening ear. So I feel like that's kind of what it's all about. You don't need to necessarily put in the hours, but even just being a brother within our house, I guess. So that's what I feel like. I thank you for that, for sure.
You know, that reminds me of actually that sounds so silly. One of my mentors of being a leader is actually Ted Lasso from the show Ted Lasso. You know, and he's a fictional character, but I just think he has all those qualities, like you said, about building culture and believing in people. And I remember when I watched the show, I was like, that is a great leader. I want to be like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I've never seen that show, but I definitely have to check it out.
You gotta watch it. It's really great.
Yeah, for sure. And so what would you say like 3 values that you hold close to yourself as like a woman?
Wow, great values. Okay, I would say what you went off of earlier, self-love, taking care of myself. That's been a very big one for me, especially in the last couple of years. Has changed my life. That's a big one. And I think with that comes, like, to tie it in, Pilates and physical wellness and mental wellness and spiritual wellness. Also, I don't know if I can put this into like one word, but when I lay down at night and I close my eyes and I think about what I did that day, I want to be really proud of the decisions I've made, the words I've said, and if I'm not, how can I make that better the next day? So I do think like self-reflection maybe would be a big one. And I guess community would be my last one. I don't have family here. My family is mostly in Vegas, or I do just have a small family in general. So I have had to create family here, and without my community, I would not be where I'm at, whether it's networking for my work or just having friends to help support me and build me up. But my community has been huge to me, so I would say those are probably my 3 big things.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like community is one thing that we talk about a lot on this podcast and platform, because it is about like bringing on community change makers and leaders, and I feel like community is a lot of different things. It's like a community within your family, within your class. We have a community within our Pilates classroom.
Yes.
We have a Pilates within our school. We have Pilates within the town. Like even like so many other things. Like the lacrosse team, like even different clubs, groups that you're part of. So I feel like really taking advantage of those communities and really just trying to be like a leader or like even like a listening ear, somebody that people can lean on. I feel like it's very important. And being somebody that's like dependable, I feel like is very important. Like a lot of people like might say that they're gonna they might commit to a certain schedule and they might not show up to it. And I feel like those are the people that you have to kind of like push in the community to try to be better.
Absolutely.
But I feel like if you try to strive to be somebody that shows up on time, you can kind of really contribute to the community.
Yeah.
And
it's just like a trickling effect. You just do the right thing, and I think people notice that.
Yeah, people really gravitate towards it for sure. And I feel like people nowadays, especially with like social media and all that stuff, I feel like people gravitate towards like authenticity. If you're like authentically yourself, then people will really respect you, and they might even start being more of themselves.
Yes.
In general. So.
I do think that is the one thing that the good thing about social media is that I think there is more authenticity in this world. People are more okay to be themselves.
Yeah, for
more
sure.
so recently.
Yeah. What advice would you give to like 10-year-old, like the 10-year-old version of yourself, or maybe even like your future kids?
Oh wow, my 10-year-old self. You know, I actually did this. Speaking of like self-reflection, I do this thing called mirror work, where I look in the mirror, especially if I'm going through something difficult. I look in the mirror and I talk to myself as if I'm a child. Like, what would, if it was one of my students, what would I say to them? And so I actually do this quite often. I guess for me, I would say that kind of like what I said before, you are so capable, and to always make sure that you are authentic to yourself in the sense of like having boundaries and knowing your worth, because you will not, if you are constantly looking for external validation for that worth, it's going to be a very difficult life to live. So to learn at a young age how valuable you are to this world, that you mean something and that you are powerful, just by being the best version of yourself and inspiring others with that. That can be world changing. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I like that exercise that you kind of gave us in the beginning, where it's like you kind of talk to yourself like as if you were your own, like a student or something like that. I feel like that's very, very important perspective, because like I know I do private lessons for like lacrosse, and sometimes the kids will be like, oh, why don't you try to go pro and stuff like that, you know? And it's like, you know what I'm saying? It's like very, like you said, like you're very capable, you know? Like we might not even know what we hold within ourselves. So it's very important to like if you shoot for the stars, you'll land on, you know what I'm saying, the moon or whatever the thing is, the clouds or whatever, you know? And it's like, you might not make it to the pros, but you might be great with the greatest version of yourself, you know? And that's really all that matters at the end of the day, is that you tried your hardest, that you put your best foot forward, and that you knew, that you know that like whatever was written for you was meant for you, you know? So I feel like that's very important, and that's very like a unique perspective that you kind of have given the audience for sure. So thank you for that. Who has really motivated you to become the best version of yourself?
You know, my father did. My father was, he passed away 8 or 9 years ago now.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. But he was just such a wise soul. And from a very young age, like a lot of these things that I've talked about today and what I tell my students or my life lessons or values have come from him. And it's, I realize as I'm saying these things, I'm like, I heard these things as a kid, because he would say all these things to me. So I would say he was, he's been a huge part of my life, and very thankful for all the lessons that he has taught me.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I guess this might be like the last question. So where do you hope to see yourself in 5 to 10 years from now?
You know, that's so funny. I am not, so I used to be as a kid, I used to be really good, like had my whole life planned out. When I was like 13, I was like, I'm gonna do this, then I'm gonna do this, and by the time I'm 20, I'm gonna do this. And you know, now I would like to have kids in the next 5 to 10 years. I would like to be, I guess I don't have a specific thing, it's just bigger things. I would like to feel financially secure. I would like to have a strong connection with my community still, or even more so than I do now. I would like to be a better leader. I'd like to be the better version of myself in 5 to 10 years. I can't say it's like I want to be doing exactly this. You know, it's just like an overarching. I just want to have good experiences in life. I want to be a better, more evolved version of myself.
Yeah, and I guess I kind of want to explain why I asked that question, because like the reason why I kind of do this podcast is to kind of like preserve and record modern history. That's what I like to call it. And so like I feel like you can kind of look back at this in 5 to 10 years from now, or even with your kids, you can kind of watch this. And I feel like that's very important. I feel like even for me, I feel like I love to see my kids watch these episodes, and you know what I'm saying? I feel like that'd be very important. And so that's the reason why I asked this question, and just in general, if you maybe have any goals, but you kind of said that you just want to be happy, financially secure, and you want to, you know what I'm saying? So I respect that. So
yeah, I love my life right now, so I would just want it to keep kind of going in this direction.
Yeah, keep amplifying.
Yeah,
for sure. And I guess so. Would you have like any closing thoughts or any like comments to the audience?
I don't know, not much, I guess. I mean, keep watching this podcast because this is fantastic. I mean, I think it's a wonderful venue and an outlet for people, especially in our community. You know, there's lots of podcasts on Spotify. You can listen to any celebrity, but you know, I think these are the more important things, the people that are around us or near to us, to help us. So yeah, I would say continue watching.
For sure, thank you so much. Yeah. And like you said, like I feel like this podcast kind of is like the community leaders. They see what the problems are. They really interact with the people.
Yeah.
Like you interact with like hundreds of students, hundreds of different like dancers, different people in general. So even like of all ages. So I feel like you have a very unique perspective, and I feel like we've been blessed with your presence and with your perspective. So thank you for that. I guess we'll kind of close off. So to end off, I just want to say thank you, Taylor, for your time today and for sharing your story and knowledge with our audience. Hopefully we can continue to use this platform to empower others and to inspire the next generation of leaders. I just want to say thank you to anyone who has made it this far in the video and who has watched the video. I hope you can take something from today's episode. I truly appreciate you, and I pray that you obtain success in whatever forms it may be. Thank you for your time, and this was the Imperishable Consciousness Platform.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.